Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. I have here Victoria. She is a revered self-love scientist and empowerment coach known for helping individuals reclaim their sexual confidence and embrace a life enriched with pleasure and fulfillment. Overcoming corporate burnout, boundary issues, and divorce, Victoria has transformed her life's adversities into a source of strength and empowerment. Drawing from her own journey of self-discovery and resilience, she specializes in navigating the interest can I not speak today? Interest, intimacy, empowerment, and personal transformation. It's been one of those days. With a foundation in science, Victoria has honed transformative techniques that fuse self-love, psychology, and sexuality, guiding others towards ecstatic pleasure and well-being. Her approach is compassionate and non-judgmental, providing a safe space for clients to explore their desires, confront limitations, and embrace a new narrative around self-love, sex, relationships. Victoria's coaching is personalized, intuitive, and transformative, empowering individuals to connect with their authentic, sensual selves. Her expertise extends to yoga, leadership, and lifestyle coaching, making her a versatile and impactful guide in the journey of self-love and sexual empowerment. That is amazing. You do a lot. So it's so nice to meet you, Victoria. Thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thank you, Gina, for that absolutely stunning, beautiful introduction. Like, I need to take that with me and play it every time I connect with someone. I'm like, here, listen to this.
Yeah, I mean, you do beautiful things. Of course, you need a beautiful introduction. No, I was just telling you about like a little bit about my background, and back then when I was drinking a lot, I really did not love myself. Obviously, then that's why I was drinking because I that's what I felt that brought me that confidence, that brought me that personality that felt like I can take on everything. But in reality, it just did the opposite. It dragged me down and it just brought me to hell, literally hell. And I had many rock bottom points in my life. And I know a lot of people actually do hit rock bottoms. And I was going to ask you if you could actually share a moment when you realized you had a rock bottom moment and how it propelled you into the journey of self-discovery and personal transformation.
Yes, I'd love to. And I really appreciate you expressing and sharing your story. I think because I've had a few rock bottoms, but the one that literally became the catalyst was I started to recognize up until a point that I was also going out just to kind of fill in this void that I was unwilling to sit in, and that looked like going out, when I say partying, it was more like dancing and drinking um and at this point I was married. I had everything the American dream. I had a career, I had a husband, the house, the dogs, and yet I was like literally seeking ways to numb my brain because deep down I felt so alone and disconnected, and I kept thinking that it was something like there was something wrong. I was doing something wrong because it was like, how could I ever think of something better than this when this is a very kind human? Um, and so one night I was taking a shower and it had gotten to the point where I was sitting there and I recognized, I was like, oh my gosh, I keep distracting myself. And my ex-husband was out with his friends and doing their own thing, and I was at home with the dogs. And I remember sitting there thinking and feeling so alone and trying to, think of like, oh, like, why is it that I feel like I can't, like, why do I have to distract myself?
Mm.
Right. And I played music, and at some point, I step out of the shower and I just collapse. I sit on my floor and I just start sobbing. And I realize, that the behaviors I was doing was not healthy and it was not fair to the relationship, just going out and trying to like be out late, come home. And at one point, I even, found myself like wanting to be with other people. And I had the same discussion with my ex. I was like, hey, I'm not sure, you know, I ended up telling, I was very honest with him. I was like, hey, I don't like that I'm starting to feel this way towards other people because this is something missing with us. And I know it's at the moment, I was like, it's me, I'm the problem. And in that moment when I was sitting on the floor, I literally was like, I know if I don't do something different, I'm gonna be here again. Because this was not the first time I found myself sobbing in my bathroom. And I remember sitting there for a moment, and it was almost like a way of just, I'm not saying giving up, but in a moment just allowing myself to feel the shame and the pain and the emotions, and just fully sitting there and looking at this what do you call it? A crossroads. And I could feel myself looking to the left. And I was like, if I go to the left, I know I will be here again. I'm gonna keep, partying and drinking because I'm really like I'm unhappy. I'm not, this is not what I want. But if I stay here, I'll make everybody else happy and everybody wants this for me. And why not? Like, why should I change? And when I looked to my right, I could see and feel joy into what I would call now pleasure. I could see myself experiencing what something I was wanting for a long time, and that's freedom, experiencing deep intimacy and success and having real health. And I sat there for a moment. I was like, at what cost to go right? And that looked like separating. It looked like leaving everything I thought I needed behind. And I was terrified because that means I was like, what are they going to think of me? Um, I went right. I went to the right. In that moment, my unconscious mind was like, you know, we've been waiting for you, and up until this point, it was almost like my body was mourning the loss of this relationship. I just could not make that connection myself without fully sitting in, to be honest, like sitting in my own shit.
Mhm.
And that was probably the biggest release I had ever experienced emotionally and on my nervous system. And, the days and weeks to follow were, having these really hard conversations with my ex. And we ended up, we separated. And the moment I moved out and like I walked, like I left everything there and we did our whole proceedings. Here's the crazy part about that. When I made that decision on the floor, it was like I could breathe for the first time. Like, even though this feels painful because I will be hurting someone who doesn't deserve to feel hurt, I could breathe. I could feel expansion. And that's how I knew that this was the right decision. And it took me a long time to get to this point. And from that experience, I've really valued the power of, vulnerability, of really tuning in into your worth and what you want, and knowing the difference between, kind of just going through the motions, just doing everything based on validating and making other people happy, versus actually like, what is it that you want and why not you? And it wasn't like one day I woke up and was like, I think I'm gonna get a divorce. It was one of those moments where it would happen. Like the thought came in, and I was like, no, 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 be quiet, be quiet. Like, don't do that. When in reality, it was actually, one of the healthiest things we could do, because we were both, individuals who deserve, our own, intimacy, romance, to experience love, to be with someone who values not only their partner, but values themselves. And that's something that we were missing. We just, over time became very separated. And I was already like knee deep in pleasure and understanding psychology. And I was like, wait a minute. um, so that is my rock bottom, which catalyzed to where I am right now.
Wow, well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I had some similarities to your story, and I was thinking about too, because I'm also divorced, but remarried now. But I had to get that divorce because it was just unhealthy. Two unhealthy people together. I was an alcoholic. He was an enabler, like codependency, and so we were like hurting each other in a way. And sometimes you just know you either grow together or you grow apart. You can't just stay in a relationship that you're like, hey, trying to make everybody else happy and safe. Well, what about you? I always say you come first. If you're not happy, no one is going to be happy around you because you're not happy. That energy exchange, the energy that we have, it it like spreads. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And another thing that I remember sitting with myself, I think it was one time where I was already separate from my ex-husband and I didn't know how to take it because I was heavily still drinking. And I remember when I went home after we had like a little coffee chat or whatever, and then I went home and I just knew it was like the end. I wish I was like you, where I felt like more freedom. I felt like enclosed, like everything was falling apart. It really is because I was in that alcoholic state of mind where I wasn't even in the right state of mind. I think if I hadn't been drinking and then I come to realization like, hey, this is not going to work, I think it would have been more like you, where I'm like freedom. And so I didn't discover that freedom until I got sober. And one thing that I discovered was how to love myself and start taking myself on dates.
Mhm.
Right, we didn't take. So I remember I went to a spa and it was just me. I literally took Uber from, because I live in San Jose, California. So like in that area to San Francisco, I went to a spa and I just enjoyed my time by myself. I hung out in their like pool area by myself. Everything was by myself. I went back home by myself. Like everything was wonderful. So I love what you say about the concept about romancing oneself. And I think that's completely, totally intriguing. Now, how did you begin this process? And what were some of the first steps you went and took to cultivate a deeper relationship with yourself?
So I would say when I moved out when I moved out of my house and then I got my new place, um, I was not perfect. My whole brain was scattered because my identity was not the same. Like I'm not that same woman. I'm no, your identity goes with the relationship, right? And I remember at like practicing and asking myself, what is it that I wanted? Like, what do I want to work towards? Who do I want to be? And what do I want to attract and manifest in my lifestyle? And again, like early on, I would call myself for a long time, even when I was married, a hopeless romantic. And I was like, wait a minute, what would it be like to be a hopeful romantic? And, at the time I was not ready to date or see anyone. I knew that it was important for me to spend time on my own to actually cultivate this new identity, this new relationship. And so I started working into a routine, really, like this, like even the smallest things, setting time aside for myself and actually like putting discipline, like adding it to the calendar, like going to the gym, meditating, going for walks. And then it got to the point where I started craving, wanting to be around someone, wanting to attract a partner. And yet I remember like I think I was complaining, you know, how is, when am I gonna find the, attract a partner or something like that. And then I realized that, in these moments when we ask ourselves like, why not me or woe is me, it's really interesting if you take a moment and think about this is not the hardest thing you've ever had to sit with. And I was like, wait a minute, if I can take myself through this, if I could take myself through that divorce process and stand up for myself and speak my truth, like that whole thing, and I'm sure you knew like relationships changed and that whole process. If I can do that, I can do anything. And so it really served as a confidence booster to be like, wait, I don't have to, like I know now, and I knew back in that process that no one is coming to save me. I get to be the one who saves me here today in this moment. And what would that look like? And I was like, well, I'm going to take myself out. And if I wanted to go out on a date, what would that look like? And I was like, well, as a hopeful romantic, I want to go somewhere romantic with like really nice dinner and wine. So I took myself out on a date at one of these really nice restaurants where my first apartment was. And I remember feeling so awkward. I had no, like, I remember feeling very weird and very uncomfortable because, for so long it was just waiting for someone to do that or take the initiative to take interest in me and just accepting the handout. And now I was like, I'm no longer going to accept just any handout. I'm going to accept and take what is valuable to me. So I need to start figuring out what that looks like by rekindling this relationship with who I am now. And so I would say the planning the date nights and the I would say self-love rituals. I started I started studying a lot more about pleasure, especially for women, and how there's a gap in communicating that education. So I would start preaching about female masturbation and how, how powerful that really is, when you spend time with yourself and actually get to know what feels good in your body, it like reconnects your mental health with your sexual health. It boosts your confidence. It strengthens your communication because now you know like what feels really good. So you can say that to your partners or your lovers. And it also, I get very nerdy about this, so bear with me.
That's okay.
With with these practices, you actually there's a lot happening at a cellular level. So your hormones are shifting and balancing back in. So you feel less alone. You feel more at peace and at home with yourself. You feel like at the end of your practice, whether or not you have an orgasm, it still feels very good to reconnect again. And you no longer feel obligated to go chase just anybody, because in that moment you're like, that was fantastic. And you start developing such appreciation for who you are by implementing these things from the date nights to the self-love practices to the morning and evening routines.
Yeah, so sitting with yourself too, and then discovering like what pleases you, what kind of pleasure can you get from things, whether it's sexually or just being out in nature or food. I know food always makes me happy, especially chocolate.
Same,
I
same.
love chocolate. Yeah, so now, with the whole confidence and self-love, it's those are like two crucial pieces for our well-being. Like, I know back in the day, I hated myself and of course, I didn't love myself because I hated myself. And then building that confidence, I had to practice what a self-confident person would be. Like, if the higher version of Gina, what would she be eating? What would she be doing? How would she be talking? Who would she be hanging out with? Like, what is her favorite activities? Then that's when I'm like, okay, I would then stand up tall. I would smile often. I will go ahead and like meet whoever I want to meet, engage in the conversations that I want to engage and do the activities that I want to do. And then once I started taking those into practice, I just like the confidence was it was just because I was practicing. So I always think practicing is always definitely crucial in that. But is there any other things that have also helped you in your mental health and overall happiness?
Mhm. I'm trying to think of what was very helpful in those moments.
Yeah.
And I think it's learning to be vulnerable,
Mhm.
learning to, I would say like we experience these different fluctuations of emotions, the shame, the anger, the sadness. And I'm not sure if you had experienced this, um, but we do know that whenever we do experience some kind of negative emotion, we try to like bring it down and cover it up with like this sense of like, nope, I'm gonna like just stuff that down. I'm gonna pretend like I'm just gonna fake it till I make it. And I would go ahead and say, don't do that, because by withholding these emotions, you're storing it somewhere in your body, which does physically manifest into another illness. So by allowing yourself to experience these emotions and just, it takes 90 seconds for this to process. So if this like feeling of shame comes up, it's like almost like welcome it, cry, if you need to take the energy out in the gym or, step outside. Um, just letting the emotions process, and with your vulnerabilities, if you are looking for, someone to express that with, is another thing that helped me out. So I didn't speak to a lot of people during this process. I went down and like hiding, and only few people knew what was really happening. So it was like trying to navigate those relationships, like who do I feel safe to talk to about this? Because in my relationships and in my family, nobody's done this before. So it was very hard to find some kind of relatability. And I would say, what else? What helps with my mental health? I think, to be honest with you, like this whole process, my health was very terrible before I made this choice. And that included my sleep. And I'll never forget my first night in my first home. I slept so hard because I couldn't sleep in my other house. And now I just felt this sense of relief and safety. And I would say, sleep is very important. Scheduling the sleep, making sure you're getting between those 6 to 8 hours, and learning what's really feeding into your growth and what's taking away.
Yeah.
Because you may have experienced this as well. When I recognized that like I was distracting myself with drinking, I knew I was no longer a desire to be a part of that community or have those relationships where it's just constantly like parties and drinks and you know that's their version of living their best life. And then I discovered that traveling and experiencing culture and cooking and enjoying foods, those were more expansive for me. And in order for me to do that, I needed to let those go and recognizing like this was actually doing more harm for me than anything else.
Yeah, I had to get rid of some friends too because they were like my drinking buddies. We go to the bars, and so we do gossip and drink, gossip and drink. But what's healthy about that? Absolutely nothing. Just putting garbage in our minds, thinking all these different things. Well, she said this to me, and well, he said that to me. Caca stuff, I say. So yeah, we had to actually go and find like people that we want to align to, people who we want to be like, people that will inspire us, people who are like, okay, that's the woman that I want to become. Let me start hanging out with her instead. And so that's why I think mentors and coaches are very important because we are the example. And then, I mean, of course, we've had to go through the experiences that we've gone through to get to where we're at now our clients can relate to, and we can relate to them. So it's like we get it, we get it, especially with people pleasing too. I was a big people pleaser. Yes, ma'am, to everybody. Like, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. And especially with even children, it's like, yes, 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 yes. Now I've learned to actually say no. And I know many women actually struggle with this, people pleasing, um, when they don't get their own needs met and they don't get what they've desired done. So what advice would you actually give to someone who's beginning this transition from people pleasing to start recognizing that their worth is more important?
One of the first things I would recommend is learning what are some core values for you in terms of your relationships. What does that look like? And then if you find yourself, there's that part. So that part's first is like identify what your core values are. Like, and these are things that are like, what is important for you? What makes this important? And the second thing is listen to your body. Your body is so smart. It'll know when it's like and your listeners have probably done this. When someone, let's say, oh, let's go, you get invited to a dinner, right? And it's from your work friends, and you already instinctively on the inside don't want to go because you don't want to go. You're not interested in going. You would much rather go home, take a bath, catch up on Netflix, or read your favorite book. And instead of listening to that feeling, you go against that and you say yes because you have this fear of like rejection or losing this relationship and being alone, etc. So you go and you have a miserable time. You embarrass yourself, like all these things happen, all because we didn't listen to our body. So core values and tune into your body. Listen to what feels more expansive. That's going to be your yes. And if it feels constrictive and you're having this hesitation, it's a no. There's no, maybe. Mm-mm. No, for every no you give, you open and create more space for something better.
Yes, I totally agree with that. So I had to start practicing that no, and then I recognized that everything else was like happening for me. I was like, yes, this is great. So yeah, and then talking about reclaiming health, and it is a broad concept that encompasses many aspects of well-being. How do you actually approach this in your work, particularly in relationship or relation to like mental health and sexual health?
What was the question?
Oh, how do you approach in your work reclaiming health in
Mm.
relation to mental and sexual health?
So I practice a lot of neurolinguistic programming techniques and family models. So my coaching services are a blend of psychology and self-love. And so we do a lot of open-ended questions. We do some activities that require going more in depth than your average conversations. And it's creating the safe space to be vulnerable and just providing little bits of education. I assign homework such as like I've had clients and I'm like, hey, today we're going to schedule your date night. We're going to talk about what you're going to wear, where you're going, and putting it on the calendar. And it's really fun to see how in the beginning they're very hesitant. They like, I don't know, this feels weird. And by the next session, there's already signs, they're experiencing signs of confidence because they put themselves in a situation that required them to, be uncomfortable. And that's where we start building the confidence.
Yeah, the confidence building is big. And do you notice, like, okay, do you notice your clients, like, can you just share like a success story that your clients like, thank you so much, Victoria, you've changed my life just through this practice, or any story that you'd like to share?
Yes, actually, one of my most recent one, and as soon as you said it, I could see her. And if you're listening to this, I love you so much. And so this client in particular, we were working together on rekindling her relationship with herself. She had also experienced a breakup, and it happened in a way that, it was very painful. It hurt. And it left her feeling very, insecure about herself. So we did a lot more work focused on developing self-love. So that looked like, identifying her values. And then we started assigning date nights and pleasure practices. And we would talk about, how her sexuality, was kind of defined at a young age based on her experiences and, her education, her relationship with her parents. And one of my my favorite parts about working with her is she went from, experiencing these feelings to I want to say it was in 3 to 4 weeks, she was able to put herself back out there confidently. She had this routine down. She was going to the gym, she was getting her nails done, she took herself on a date. And then several weeks later, she, signed up on the dating apps and she had 3 dates in one weekend. And I swear to God, Gina, her smile when I got on the call with her, because she was so excited to share with me what she experienced, because first I'm excited because she put herself out there to attract her new partner and lover. And the second part was when she went on these dates, she was able to figure out by listening to herself and the power of her, like, no, thank you. Like when they would ask, like, oh, I'd love to take you out again, even though they were nice, or even if she may have experienced something that wasn't good for her old self would have said yes because of that fear of being alone. And instead, she was able to, navigate, like, actually, like, I appreciate your time. No, thank you. And it gave her a lot of confidence. And she sent me an email about this. And she's like, I'm still smiling like ear to ear. And you've given me a lot of confidence. And that's probably one of my favorite ones. One of my
That's so
success.
awesome. I love that. Yes, I love always success stories and people who are just transforming, they start out just very like don't feel like they have self-worth. They're just like, I'm no good. I can't get through this, but then they start seeing them change by your help, and then they're just like blossoming into this beautiful butterfly that's like, yes, I feel great. Where you have a voice and you can say no if you don't want to go out with that guy again. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's awesome. Now, if our listeners here, I'm sure they're like, hey, I want to hook up with Victoria because I want to learn how to please myself, whether it's solo sex, whether it's, with another relationship. How can they go ahead and contact you?
The best way to contact me is my website or landing page. It's theselflovescientist.com. And that'll show them an outline of the program, my offering to work together. And then it has a little bit about me at the bottom. It's not as extravagant as Gina's introduction. So, and also besides the landing page, you can also email me at victoria.lotuslifestyle@gmail.com. And I am on social media. I have an Instagram, a TikTok, all the things. It's just that when it comes to the DMs, my emails and my program page come first. So I would recommend checking those out. And you can always go to the social medias for like, that's where all my educational posts are and my reels. If you want a good laugh or if you want to feel more connected, I do a lot of vulnerable sharing and um, but yeah, the best way to contact me at this time is the landing page and the email.
That's so awesome. Well, is there any last thoughts or anything else you'd like to share?
Oh my goodness.
Or like, for example, like for women who are actually curious about exploring their sensuality and boosting their inner confidence and don't know where to start, like what are the some initial steps they can go ahead and take or at least exercise?
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. So when it comes to um wanting to explore your sexuality further, like if you feel limited in expressing yourself and like this is really I am speaking to everyone, like my most of my clients are women and I also do work with males. If you're really feeling like you have a glass ceiling on wanting to express yourself and feel really sexy in your body, the first thing I would recommend is something I call mirror talk. And it's where you stand in front of a mirror and you look at your body from head all the way down to your toes and just kind of notice like where you draw the most attention in a loving way and where you draw the attention in a loathing way. And just kind of write down like what feelings come up and what it is about that's triggering. And people are more often surprised that when they compare the list, like maybe there's a lot longer list on the loathing side, because at the end of the day, and it goes back to when we were talking about pleasure practices, if you don't feel confident in your body, you're not going to feel confident in the bedroom, because you're going to be up in your head the whole time thinking like, am I doing this right? I wish I didn't have this way. Like, why do parts of my body look different? It's this monkey brain, like monkey mindset that, it's not really you, these are just old programs that are running in the background, and you deserve to feel very sexy. And when you are getting to a point where you can turn yourself on, your whole universe is going to tune in and everything is going to flow in just right.
Oh, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. It reminds me too. And I do sometimes look and I'm like, oh, I don't really like that. But then I look really close up, like, you know what? At least there may be a little bit of cellulite there, but at least I have a nice butt. So,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's doing those little things. If something you don't like there, but you're like, at least I have a butt. So
There are days where we experience like low levels of energy, and that's totally okay.
yeah.
It's just that there's a majority of like women are experiencing low levels of desire and pleasure because one, they've lost connection with self and they're just kind of operating at this what did I call it? It's kind of like a autopilot, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And if you really think about like the what you're experiencing in your relationships, do you feel fulfilled? Are you allowing yourself to really let yourself go? You know, do you feel safe to express your truth? Do you feel safe to experience real orgasm? And that's something that actually surprises a lot of women. Like for me, when I finally realized, when I gave myself my first orgasm, I was mind blown. I was like, why are we not talking about this? Because it changes the game. It changes how you experience intimacy and pleasure, whether you're, solo or with partners. And it's part of like my purpose is to cultivate and take something that seems very taboo and make it more of a normal topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you have to meet this one lady that I know. This is off the record here, but yeah. She teaches that too about self-pleasure and how to love yourself more. And I think you guys would be a good connection to actually to meet and just to have a chat. It'd be awesome. Anyway, anything else that you'd like to share?
Um, I got stories, love. I could share so much. So to be honest with you, I think at the end of the day, the most important relationship you can really have is the one with yourself.
Mhm.
And people do pick up on like on a woman who's confident. And you're going to intimidate people, you're going to scare people, but you're also going to attract the right people.
Yes, absolutely. You'd be surprised. You'd be like, oh, I didn't know this person would even talk to me. Well, hello, you're reflecting exactly what you're emulating. So yeah, it's going to come back. That's
That is what
awesome.
I have to share. And I really appreciate you and your listeners tuning in and listening to the stories.
Oh, they're going to love it. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much, Victoria. It's been a pleasure having you on, and I just cannot wait to see what other initiatives you have in the future.
Thank you, Gina.